Okay, so this is questions 12 to 22 of the IB23 November HL biology paper. So here we're looking at evolution, so small birds called St Kilda wrens. They look similar to the wrens on the mainland Scotland, but they are larger and there are differences in the colour of their feathers. So this is very similar to the kind of Galapagos finches concept. So the question then says, what is the most likely explanation for these differences? And what we're doing is we're diverging away from a starting point. So the answer is C, gradual diversion. None of the others actually make sense, and that is the correct answer. So, which is an example of speciation? So let's think speciation is the formation of two genetically identical species who can genetically dissimilar species who can no longer reproduce to produce fertile offspring. If you think about the rinky-dink story, you had the ones with the springy tails and then the ones with the flat tails. So what's an example of that here? Selective breeding to produce new varieties of wheat. Well, a variety is not a species, so not that one. Evolution of different courtship behaviours in separate populations of the cricket. Yes, possibly that one. Natural selection leading to an increase in the frequency of darker individuals. Again, it's not a separate species, so not that one. Selective feeding by koalas on eucalyptus species, not that one. So we go back to the one which we thought was correct, and yes, it is indeed B. That is the correct answer there. Okay, question 14. What are the evolutionary origins and functions of homologous structures? So homologous structures are things which share common ancestry. So whenever you're doing, if you do a table type multiple choice question, you can usually start to eliminate things based on some of the key points. So we know that a homologous function is going to have common origin. Okay, so that means we can immediately discount C and D because they say different origin. Okay, and so then we're looking at are they the same function or different function? Well, if you think about your homologous structures of the pentadactyl limb, they have similar but not identical structures, and so our answer is B, common origin and same or different function. Okay, question 15. The Balkan lizards living in mainland Greece eat mostly insects but also small amounts of plants. The same species living on Greek islands where insects are scarce show a greater percentage of those physical traits useful for eating plants than mainland lizards. Okay, so what is the biological explanation for these observations? So if we think about it, we're seeing divergence here, aren't we? So variation in each population allowed adaptation to occur. That doesn't quite make sense. Lizards migrated to areas where they're better adapted, definitely not. Lizards on the island diverged due to lack of interbreeding with the mainland population, yes, hello. And then homologous structures have prevented species from evolving, no, not that. So it is definitely C, the divergence, a bit like with the wrens in the earlier question. Okay, question 16, moving on. So what is a property of arteries? Well, we know that arteries have elastic walls, so A. Okay, so here, this is the one that people sometimes get a bit mistaken with. All arteries carry oxygenated blood, except they don't, do they? Because of the pulmonary artery, which carries deoxygenated blood. Okay, staying with the heart, question 17. What blood flow does the right semilunar valve prevent? So the semilunar valves are the valves between the ventricles and the arteries. Okay, so it's the right ventricle going to the artery which comes out of the right ventricle. So that would be the pulmonary artery. So let's have a look. Backflow of blood to the right atrium during ventricular contraction, no. Blood flowing from the aorta back to the heart when the ventricle is filling, no. Blood flowing from the pulmonary artery to the right ventricle when the heart is relaxing, hello, that one please. And then blood flowing from the right atrium to the vena cava, no. Okay, so 17C. It's always good just to check when you think you found the right one that you haven't made a mistake. Okay, so question 18. The diagram shows changes in the pressure of the left atrium, ventricle and aorta during a single cardiac cycle. At what point during the cycle does the atrioventricular valve close? So if you think about the atrioventricular valve, you've got your arteries going to your ventricles, okay, and that's your AV valve. So the AV valve is going to close when the pressure in the ventricle is higher than the pressure in the atria, okay, because that's going to force these flaps shut. So if we now have a look here, it's at this point here that the pressure in the ventricle is now higher than the pressure in the atrium, and therefore it is at A that this happens. So A is your correct answer. Okay, question 19. Which is an adaptation to increase rates of gas exchange in the lung? Well, definitely not small surface area or dry surface. There are no muscles in the alveoli, and there is high vascularization. That means lots of blood vessels, and that obviously helps to increase the rate of gas exchange because it provides lots of places for the gases to go. Okay, where in the body are type 1 pneumocytes found? Well, that is A again, that is the alveoli. Okay, so then 21. An individual was presented with a stimulus resulting in the release of epinephrine. So epinephrine is adrenaline, okay, which if we remember is our fight or flight hormone. So what is the most likely nature of this stimulus? So it's going to be something that's going to provide something a little bit of a shock. So a coach shouting to begin physical activity is your answer there. And question 22, which process results in the exchange of gases across the membrane of pneumocytes? So is that active transport? No. Simple diffusion? Maybe. Facilitated diffusion? No. Or mass flow? Now, I would entirely understand if you thought about mass flow because it's lots of stuff going on, but it's not mass flow, it is simple diffusion, okay? That is the answer to that question.